Hi, this is Derek with Boise Cylinder Head Services. Today we're going to start a rebuild on a 81 Toyota Starlet. It's a 1.3 liter cylinder head. Has really tiny valves, ports, combustion chambers. This is the spring side, and it's pretty nasty. This is the tiny little combustion chamber it got. So this thing's super itty bitty. And then here we got our exhaust and intake ports. I mean, they're twice the size of my finger. That's crazy tiny for a little car. But this car is a pretty tiny little thing. So what we're doing with this one, the customer thinks that they have bent valves, and I don't see any obvious contact on the face of the valves here. Usually you see like a little cleaned up spot where it contacted the piston, and I'm not seeing that. So we're going to tear it apart, grind the valves, and see how many valves are savable. Check the guides and come up with an estimate for what it's going to take to repair this thing. He did bring in a secondary head so that we could potentially harvest some of the parts from here if need be. This one's seen some better days. I got some coolant or water in the combustion chamber there and rusted out. Anyways, this one isn't a very good cylinder head to rebuild. At least that's what we're being told. This is the better shape one here. So I'm just going to pull the valves and springs and keepers out of this thing, put it in a basket, get it cleaned up, glass bead the valves, grind it, and then we'll be able to finish our estimate. So I'm going to take it over to our machine here, and we're going to pop these loose. Grab a basket too. So this is a 81. They're getting rarer and rarer. I probably rebuilt one of these quite some time ago, but it has definitely been a while. Don't really see these cars on the road anymore, so this is probably somebody who's a big fan of this vehicle and doing some sort of a restoration job on it. On this older stuff, you know, you got to be aware of cracks and issues there. A little keeper just shot out of there. Let's see. Got it. It's got some, it didn't change their oil very much in this thing. You can see the grease and the grime there build up. You know, that's a definite sign that they weren't taking care of the vehicle all that much. But that's all right, because we can rebuild this thing and make it run like new. We're going to try and do a full rebuild on this, videos on this cylinder head here. And that'll consist of us estimating it out, finding out what it needs to be rebuilt, and then going through each step of rebuilding this thing. There's a good chance that it might require guides. We'll check that out in this video. We can just kind of wiggle a valve in the guide and see what kind of clearance it has. Usually there's a specific spec of clearance that it has that we have to be within, or else we're pushing, getting a burnt valve or something like that if we don't address that loose guide issue. Yeah, some of these valves are sticking. It's probably seen some water sitting in the combustion chamber, coolant, or the exhaust or intake ports that sunk into the guide and kind of locked up the valve. Sometimes that's an issue where we have to change out the guide just because of how much corrosion has happened on this older stuff. But we'll find out here shortly. Alrighty, now that we got that out, we can take this head back over to our bench there and take a look and see the valve to seat contact area, see what kind of wear this thing has. We're always keeping our eye out for cracks and stuff like that, and any kind of external damage that might tell us that this head's too far worn or broken to be reconditioned. I just pulled the springs out and set them in order there. Now we're going to check the seat contact. And you can see right there, it's pretty blackened. I mean, that means it's seen some miles. You know, it's starting to lose compression there. It's not sealing like it should. And you can also see it on the seat here. We got some good pits that over time, you know, it just creates little hot spots and pits that slowly gets rid of the sealing surface on both the valve and the seat. And that's why it needs reconditioned. It starts getting low compression, stuff like that. That requires it to be rebuilt in order to solve that issue. Some of these valves are really locked in here. I'm hitting this one. It's not moving at all. That's destined to be an issue. All right. That's all we got on this thing. We're going to grind the valves. And hey, this is Derek with Boise Cylinder Head Services. We're continuing on with this tear down and estimate on this 81 Toyota Starling 1.3 liter. The number one complaint the customer had is that he thought the valves were bent because the valves got stuck and didn't return back up. And I don't see any evidence of a bent valve, but as we were taking this thing apart, we had an intake valve in there that we had to really hammer on to get out. And the common issue with these older cars is they've been sitting around for a while, gas in their gas tank, and the gas goes bad. I mean, today it can be as early as 6 months before the gas goes bad, and it turns into like a rubber cement kind of material. And it really has a distinctive smell, so you can usually smell it inside the port, but you can see that kind of varnish or that layer coating that's on there, and it's kind of a rough feel. But when that old gas, you know, people are trying to restore this thing, they turn the key over, it sprays that bad gas in there, and it just kind of locks up as it goes. So it goes out and then just won't return because it'll freeze up in the guide. And, you know, it leads you to think you got a misfire or a bent valve or something like that. We know it to be bad gas just by a smell, but it's a pretty common issue with these things. Another thing we noticed here is that this valve stem seal just spins right around, so I'm sure it was burning some oil, and I mean, that's definitely bad. It got some wiggle to it. It's pretty much coming off. Huh? Crispy. Yeah, it's definitely crispy. You know, over time these things get really hard and brittle, and you can't even squish them. We use Blue Viton valve stem seals that we have a lot of here at the shop. And that Blue Viton is a lot better material. It lasts in more extreme heats, and just overall outlasts this kind of polyurethane inferior seal. Another thing we wanted to look at is the guide clearance on the exhaust. What we do here, there's a better way to do this, but this kind of gives us an idea when we just put a valve in there and give it a wiggle back and forth. There's not a significant wiggle. I imagine our clearances are probably going to be just fine. We are going to also test these springs on our spring tester. Older stuff like this tends to wear out, and the springs are inconsistent. So if we test them all, we'll find out if they're pretty consistent. We'll also pull up a spec to find out what they should be at and see if they are at that spec. Yeah, the next move we're going to do here is grind the valve and get this thing cleaned up, do a visual inspection for cracks. But that's all we got. Hi, this is Derek from Boise Cylinder Head Services. Today we're continuing on with the Toyota 1.3 liter Starlet, 1981 Starlet cylinder head. We are going to glass bead these valves here and grind them and see which ones are savable. They don't look like they're in that bad a shape, so I imagine we'll save them all. Again, the issue was with this head, bad gas got shot through it and it stuck the guides. The stem of the valve got stuck in the guide, and so they wouldn't close properly. So we're going to go over here to our glass bead machine. I'm going to touch these up real quick, then we'll go to our valve grinder. This is going to be a little noisy. That's the valves inside the glass beater, cylinder head we're working on. Take that out of here. Oh shit. And close this thing up, shut off our light. And now we're gonna glass bead these puppies. Okay, it's gonna get a little noisy. Alright, that's our 4 exhaust valves. Now we're going to glass bead our 4 intake valves. We're just trying to knock all the carbon off so they look closer to new. Alrighty, now that we got these things cleaned up, we're going to pull them out of the glass beater. Got to blow them off, make sure we get all our bits of glass bead off these things so that doesn't get jammed up in our machine. But as you can see, we've knocked off all the carbon buildup there. They don't look perfect like a new valve, but they do look significantly better than when they were coated with all that carbon. And I try and stay away from the stem area so that it doesn't affect our guide to valve clearance, because that could cause other issues that we wouldn't want to have happen. But yeah, we're going to take it over to our valve grinder. I'm going to blow them off on our walk over there. And let me blow them off right here. And we'll come over to our quick lay valve grinder here. Brush it in over there. I'm just like setting them all up over here. I'm going to grind our exhaust valves first. We've oiled up this machine this morning, so it should be all ready to go. We'll check our surface finish and make sure it looks good to continue on. Always make sure you're wearing your safety glasses when you are working this type of machine. I'm going to have our fluid running to cool down our valve. We just drag the valve back towards the stone here. Usually give it a light touch and put the fluid on it. And we'll just grind it till it comes clean. These older valves have a little bit thicker face and margin. You can get away with a lot more than on newer valves, which are a lot thinner and have a smaller tolerance. Once you get the valve ground, we can pull it out of here and we'll look at our finish. It looks pretty good, pretty smooth all the way across, no pits. We're just going to do that to the other 4 here, and then we'll switch to the intake valves. When a valve's bent, it only touches about half the valve, sometimes less, sometimes more, but it definitely doesn't contact all the way around. So we keep an eye out for that. The sound is important, and just watching the thing clean up all the way. And if you know, 5 to 10 thousandths of an inch should be sufficient. That's enough for this one. No pits, got a good grind on it, nice and smooth. Looks good. Looks like they're all going to turn out. You can see how it starts here with little bits of pits and wear on it, and that's what we're trying to get rid of, is just all that inconsistent surface there to make a consistent, nice, smooth surface. All right, we'll pop another one in. Yeah, that's less consistent than the others. You kind of hear chirping noise. It's a little worn out more than the others, but it's starting to clean up pretty good. We're still within our 5 to 10 thousandths there. Probably at about 6, 7 thousandths. That should do it. Here we are, a nice consistent finish, smooth. Here we go. That one's off to a little bit of a noisy start, but it smooths out pretty quickly. A lot of times these things will get heat warped and distorted. Sometimes extremely, sometimes not so much. I'd say this is not so much. They're all cleaning up relatively quickly, so that's a good sign. Another smooth finish there. Kind of hard to see with all that oil on it, but it's a pretty sweet finish. That's definitely going to seal. Now let's move on to the intake valves. These ones don't have as much pitting to worry about, but they do kind of get an impression of the seat on it. You can kind of see the little inconsistencies in the surface where that valve seat is pounded in a little bit. But intakes tend to clean up a lot quicker than the exhaust, so we'll see. There we go. This one had quite a seat imprint in it. Pounded in pretty good. Still within our 5 to 10 range on these things. So let's see what our finish looks like. Nice, even, consistent, not scratchy. Cool. Just finish up the other 3. Then we'll grind the tips of these valves. And there you have it. There's all 8 valves ground out. We'll set them all right here, and then we'll touch up these tips. That usually goes pretty quick. Just got to lock it in our fixture here. Yeah, well, we set our stone to just touch it there. Lock our fixture in. turn it on and we should be able to just knock these out pretty quick. That just cleans up the end of our valve here. Goes from a dull worn finish here to a nice shiny one. Kind of hard to see on that, but it definitely gets rid of any imperfections. So our 4 exhaust valves, our 4 intake valves, ooh, that one's a little inconsistent there, so we're going to have to take a little more off that one. Yep. There's still a little spot on that one. This might have been one of the ones that was stuck in there pretty good from the bad gas. We had to tap on that thing pretty hard to get it out. But we've cleaned it up, and it took about 7-8 thousandths. And that's all our ground valves. They did turn out. So now we're just going to... Hi, this is Derek with Boise Cylinder Head Services. Today we're continuing on with our Toyota 81 Toyota Starlet. I think it's a 1.3 liter cylinder head here. We've torn it down, estimated it out. Now all we got to do is glass bead it. So we're going to take this into our glass bead machine and clean all that dirt and grime out of it. And then the next step after that will be cutting the seats in our Rottler SGF8. But for now, let's just go to the glass beater and we're going to clean this thing up. It's our glass beading booth where all the magic happens. Just pop it in there. I'm going to shut off light. This thing is going to make a lot of noise as we blast it with glass bead. So I won't be doing much talking. Enjoy the music. All right, looks like we've cleaned the cylinder head up pretty good. I don't see any dirt left on there. Inside the coolant chambers, there's a little bit of rust, so I had to focus a lot on that. There's still a little bit in there, but I think all said and done, it'll rinse out. Anyways, thank you for watching. There's the back side of the head there. Usually I do an inspection just to confirm that we got everything after the glass bead job. Hey, this is Derek with Boise Cylinder Head Services. Today we're continuing on with this 1981 Toyota Starlet cylinder head, 1.3 liter. We have gone through and torn it down, ground the valves, glass beaded the cylinder head, and now we are prepared to cut it on our seat and guide machine. We're going to take the cylinder head over there, mount it in the machine behind me, get a carbide pilot to go in there, level it off both ways, front and back, side to side. And then we're going to measure the exhaust valves and the intake valves and find out exactly where we want our seat contact. Then we're going to measure that out, set our cutter, cut the exhaust seats and then the intake seats, verify our seat contact, and then we're going to move on to the resurfacer. So I'm going to carry this thing over to our machine here, bolt it in, and get started. This is our Rottler SGF8 seat and guide machine. This is a very expensive piece of equipment, and makes life really easy for us here and consistent. We can put our seat profile exactly where we want it with our fancy cutters I'm going to show you here in a minute. And it keeps all our cylinder head work really consistent and precise. Let's see. This thing flipped around. Once we get this thing clamped in, we can get our pilot and level it off. Ooh. Ooh. There we go. So this thing has just a little pin here and a little plate that we can screw down here to tighten the head into the fixture. It also has a couple of stoppers back here so we can keep our head in there level. Right here, there's one on the other side, so preferably we have a flat surface that continues the length of the head that we can use to set up our cylinder head in there nice and evenly. All right, now that we got it torqued down, I'm going to grab one of our pilots here. We have a big selection of pilots, different sizes, some just a thousandths away from each other. These are really stiff, rigid carbide pilots that don't have much give, so it gives us a nice clean cut. I'm going to start off here in the center and eyeball it at first here to kind of get us in the ballpark. Then we have an electronic digital level up here attached to the machine that tells us the positioning of the machine, both forwards and backwards. And there's our little level readout. This is left to right or front to back with the cylinder head. And this is side to side. We want it to be pretty close to the 0. I'm going to take this off and I'm going to match the cylinder head to that number up there so that our workpiece is level with our cutting piece. I'm just going to change it until it gets down to 0 or close to it. Right there looks pretty good, and we can tighten our fixtures. Make sure nothing changed on our level. It did not. And then we're going to check side to side here, and we want this to be at least consistent with our head fixture there. This is a pretty old head. It's probably seen better days, so I imagine there's a fair amount of distortion and warpage within the cylinder head. I'm going to check a couple of them here and see how far off that is. That's a little more than I like to see. We're just going to check across the board and kind of get a little idea of what we're working with here. Looks like this thing's got an L-shaped warp to it that's causing half the seats to be a little tilted. So what we can do here is we're just going to have to set the cutter to each hole. And we can tilt that head fixture up here left or right to match the hole that we're cutting. So we'll just do that as we go. I'm going to set our exhaust seat cutter up. This is our cutting edge right here. And there's several different angles. This is a 7+ angle cutter here. We got a 45-degree angle, which is the contact angle from the seat to the valve. So we're going to set that about midway on the valve, verify it, and then we'll cut all 4 of these exhaust valves. So I'll use this little fixture here to get our point on our valve that we want contacting. So I have an intake and exhaust valve right here. and we'll just slide this right into this little fixture here. We'll get this pinpoint right where we want it as far as the top of the seat, or the outer edge of the seat contact goes. Maybe a little lower. Right about there should be sufficient. We'll pop that out. Use our carbide cutter to recreate the valve, so to speak. And then we'll loosen this fixture up here and adjust our cutter out to where we want it. So I'm just setting this to the outer edge of the 45. This one's this is a pretty tiny valve here. Might have to switch to a different cutter. Yeah, we're pretty close. I'm not sure this one's going to work out. I'm going to do a little double check here just to see if it'll pan out. With these tiny valves, sometimes you need a really tiny cutter. That is our favorite cutter to use, but sometimes it doesn't work out the best. It's close. It's close. I'm going to switch to a different cutter. Make sure we get the proper finish here. This is our tiniest cutter for smaller inside diameters. We use this on like Hondas, some Subarus, anything with a really tiny head diameter on the valve. That's this point in between my fingers there. The width of that is the head diameter. So we'll just take this cutter fixture off and swap it around for this tinier one. Then we'll be able to get our contact area exactly where I'm trying to put it. In the contact area, there's a lot of factors that are involved in that. Heat distribution in the valve, wear, and the farther out you put it on the valve, the more airflow you get, but the less longevity you get. And so we want a happy medium where we get decent performance, but also have something that's going to be reliable for a little while. Close. I'm sure it's hard to see in the video there, but I'm just putting our cutting edge on the outer side of the 45 right where that needle is, because that's where I want it on our valve. I think that'll do it. We're going to get it in our machine, double check our level for each seat as we cut, and then we'll start cutting some metal out of this thing. Again, I'm going to check our level. We're at 0 here and negative 0.01. So we have a little bit of a range. We can be about 0.03 off of the 0. And we're good this way, which is side to side on the cylinder head. But this way we got about 0.12 off. So what I'm going to do to fix that is I'm going to put this on our machine, loosen up the head fixture here, and just move this whole fixture over to where the seat is, about 1.2. So that puts our cutting fixture directly consistent with the guide. And then all we have to do is cut that seat. I'm a little concerned that our fixture here is going to be in the way. We're going to do a test here and see if we can get down and cut the seat without running our fixture into that piece. Yeah. So it does look like we'll be able to contact it without any issues there. Just going to lock our piece in place. Check our speed up here, and then we're going to turn this thing on and start cutting as soon as I set this gauge. This gauge controls our depth up here. I'm going to set it to 0 where we first contact, and as we cut, it'll tell us how far we go into the cylinder head and how much we change things. So here we are. We're going to start it and do a little cutting. And right here we'll see the the cutter start cutting the valve seat, and I'm just looking for that 45-degree angle to drop in and cut clean. And then we'll use our Peruvian blue to confirm that our contact area is where we want it and that it's seating all the way around. That looks pretty good to me. Let's lift it up and take a peek. Shut off our cutter. And we'll pull this pilot out. You can see that seat contact in there, nice and shiny clean. There's no pits. And that's how we want it. You know, the pits are what we're trying to get rid of, the wear. And sometimes the seat gets pounded in. Yeah, to check our contact area, I got this Peruvian blue. It's really dark blue, or Persian blue gel here. Non-drying gel. And we can just smear that around the face of the valve here. We don't want a crazy thick coat, but enough to coat the surface. And what we're going to do is we're going to slap that into the seat, and that should reveal us our seat contact, where it is located on the valve, and if we're hitting the valve contact area all the way around the seat. So just a couple quick taps. And you can see the whitened spot on the seat is our contact area. The darker blue is where the Peruvian blue got squished to. And if you look at our valve here as well, you can see a nice clean strip, other than my thumbprint there, of where we've contacted that seat. And I'm really happy with where that seat placement is. It's on the mid-high range, outer edge, which will be perfect for this old 1981 Toyota Starlet. All right, so now all we got to do is bounce down the line here, verify our level is proper, and cut the rest of these seats. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to get this head to the surfacer. Hi, this is Derek with Boise Cylinder Head Services. Today we're continuing on with our Toyota Starlet 1981 1.3 liter cylinder head rebuild. Today we're going to resurface the cylinder head. We got it all cleaned up. We've torn it down, cut the seats, cleaned it up, and now we're ready. We ground the valves, and now we're ready to put it in our resurfacer and resurface this thing. So that's what we're going to do. Let's move it over here and get it on our parallel surfaces here. Now we just got to tighten it down. A couple of clamps to get this thing locked into place. We'll verify that our level is up to snuff, and then we will turn this machine on and start cutting. This thing is pretty old, and back with early 80s heads, they get away with a lot of warpage. I don't think this thing's warped all that much, but we'll definitely find out where we're at here shortly. We need a couple different points to hold this thing down so it doesn't get shaken or thrown out of our machine. We also like to do a shake test to make sure we can't shake this thing ourselves out of the machine. Always make sure you wear safety equipment. All these metal flakes could fly at you and get in your eyes. Yep. Safety equipment is really important. Don't want to get stuff in your eyes and make you go to the ER or the doctor to get it removed. All right, I'm just tightening down our parallels here. We want everything nice and snug. Do our shake test here, make sure this thing won't come loose. We get our level here. Make sure we're in the ballpark. It's a little bit high on this side, but once it gets into the center, it should straighten out. Looks good there. Now we just got to set our depth on this thing and and we can start cutting. This machine has a weigh system that it sets on that lets it slide back and forth, staying perfectly flat. It's heavy enough to keep it nice and solid. Alrighty, we're at 0 right there. We're probably going to take about a 4/1000 cut for our first swipe. We're wipe any debris off, make sure I get an accurate reading. We're going to put a little WD-40 on the surface so that we can keep the aluminum from sticking to itself. Put up our shield here. Turn on our cutter. And here we go. This thing rotates at about 900 RPMs, rotations per minute, with a carbide cutter that just scrapes across. It's the size of a dime, and it just scrapes across the surface, leaving a nice smooth finish. We want a certain amount of roughness on the finish, and this machine and that cutter allow us to achieve the goal we're after. We have a little fancy gauge that we can use to see how rough that finish is, but on aluminum heads, back in the early days of aluminum heads, they had a lot rougher cuts, and they'd have a lot of peaks and valleys, and over time with the head on the block, those peaks would expand and contract and actually cut through the head gasket. And so they learned that you need to have a pretty smooth finish on aluminum heads, which is now a standard practice on both aluminum and cast iron. So this machine works great for both. We just have to change our little cutter out to handle the harder cast iron heads. Yeah, we got a little bit of warpage in this thing. We'll be able to see a clear picture of that after it finishes cutting. We were taking a 4/1000 cut, and somewhere in the center there it dropped down to about 0. So we know we're not cutting all the way across clean yet, which just means we got to take another few thousandths on our next swipe to finish cleaning it up. Yeah, I think we're past the head now and cut all the way across. Let's lift it up and see what it looks like. As you can see, we almost get like a mirror-like finish on this aluminum. And over here you can see where it's still faded and not shiny clean like the rest of the surface. This is the kind of stuff we want right here. Over here, we need to take a little bit more to get down to that level. It didn't get over here, so that's all the warpage. You know, we cut 4/1000 off the top of this, and this is where it's lower than that. So it's going to require a little more of a cut to get down that far. Imagine if we do another 3/1000 cut, we'll be where we want to be. The travel speed of the cutter and the table dictate what finish we have. I mean, the rotation speed and the travel speed that we go across the cylinder head dictates what kind of, how rough or how smooth we get this finish. So we can speed it up, slow it down. Some performance cylinder heads have a specific range that you want to be within. We've checked enough times to know that pretty much every cylinder head we cut has a finish of equal or better than what is required even by the performance heads. Some factories want it to be about 30 UMI, and we end up getting about 15. So we know that we're getting a finish that's better than factory. And a big reason for that is the factory pumps out cylinder heads one right after another in a really quick manner. So they have they don't have as much time to put it on a quality finish. I mean, it's something that's going to run obviously 100,000 or more, but if they were to take a little bit more time on their resurfacing process, it would be a little bit sweeter, last a little bit longer. But they're all about production and not so much making a car that's going to run 200, 300,000 miles. You know, as long as it gets out of warranty, I'm sure they're happy. So you can see all the aluminum shavings that we've cut off other cylinder heads. It tends to build up. You know, probably 5 or 6 cylinder heads. We'll get a big pile of aluminum shavings. We're let's see, going to be taking 7 thousandths off this head altogether, which does increase the compression in the combustion chamber just a little bit. You could do the math on that if you got all the information to figure out how much. Yeah, if you took 10 thousandths off, it might increase the compression by 1 cc. On something like this, I mean, we got super tiny combustion chambers. It's not going to make a noticeable difference taking 7 thousandths off the top. We just want a nice clean surface so that our head gasket is going to seal properly. This thing is going to last as long as it can. Give it every chance we can to make it a long, reliable head, long-lasting, reliable head. It does look like we got a little bit more here in the center. We're going to take a few thousandths more. There's a couple spots I'm not too fond of here. So we'll probably end up taking about 10 thousandths off this thing altogether. Some of these older castings too have a little bit more porous of a casting, which means that there'll be little pockets and pits, little dots across the surface. That no matter how much you cut off of it, you might not clean it up as pretty as some of the newer heads. But that's all we got. We're going to finish this cut. E1 Toyota Starlet cylinder head, the 1.3 liter. We've torn it apart, estimated it out, did the valve job on it, cut the seats, resurfaced the cylinder head, washed it up, and now we are about to do final assembly. We did notice that there was a thread issue right here. The threads aren't fully in there. We can only see, well, we can see that the top quarter of those threads are eaten away. Rust, whatever, stuck a thread on the bolt and tore it out there. So we're going to fix this thread hole before we get to our assembly process. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put one of these little tiny time inserts in there. We use these all the time for thread repair. They're the absolute best thing we've ever had for thread repair. All I got to do here is take a drill bit, drill out the hole to the oversized size, put a little chamfer on it with this tool here that came in our time insert kit. That just chamfers it down so that the shoulder of this insert will fit in there nice and flush. And then we'll put new threads into the hole, and then we can tighten this thing down. So we're just going to start out with this drill bit here. A little bit of grease. Keep our tool life alive. And then we're going to drill this hole. There you go, kind of a rough start there, but the hole's nice and clean now. We're going to move on to our little chamfering tool next. We don't need to put very much of a shoulder on here, just a little bit, one all the way around. A little bit more. I think that should do it. Then we have a tap that we're going to use next to put threads in there for our insert piece to thread into. Again, a little bit of grease to keep our tool life as long as we can. And you want to go as straight as possible with this thing. Hi, this is Derek with Boise Cylinder Head Services. Today we're continuing on with the Toyota Starlet 81 1.3 liter cylinder head. We tore this thing down, ground the valves, cleaned up the cylinder head, glass beaded it, cut the seats on the valve seat area. we cut that profile. Then after that, we put in this insert here. And then now all we have left to do is put on the valve stem seals, put in the valves, and put the springs on. That's the next step we're going to be doing today. So we got our valve stem seals right here, and we're just going to put those on the guides. There's no shims that go underneath the springs. So once I put the seals on and the valves through, we're going to just put the keepers in, and we'll be done with this phase of the rebuild. Let's see, I'm going to grab a little oil here real quick. Again. To lubricate the valve stem seals, we don't want to tear the rubber. I'm going to open this package up. And what I like to do is just put a little bit of oil on the top of the guides. Some people like dipping the valve stem seals. As long as you're getting the oil on there, we're going to be fine. Doesn't really matter what oil you use. We just use some 10W30 weight oil. See a little oil there. We got the valve stem seal installer tool that we use on almost every job here. You got to pick out the right stem diameter guide here. One that's nice and snug. It'll drive the valve stem seal on nice and straight. It lowers the chance of ripping the rubber. You just screw it on like that. Hey, this is Derek with Boise Cylinder Head Services. Today we're finishing up our rebuild on this 1981 Toyota Starlet cylinder head. It's 1.3 liter. It's a pretty tiny 4-cylinder engine here. We've gone through and tore it down, ground the valves, estimated it out, and we cleaned it up, cut the seats here, and then resurfaced the cylinder head gasket surface, got it all nice and clean and shiny, and then we washed it all off. We put in a thread insert on one of the damaged threads here. Half the threads were gone in this hole, so we put in a time insert. And then we proceeded to put on the valve stem seals, which are underneath this spring here. Then we oiled those up, oiled the valves up, put them in, and put in the keepers. And the last step that we have is to vacuum check it. We have a vacuum check gun right here that we use on most of our cylinder head situations to verify that the valves to seat contact is sealing properly. We're getting about a 17 today. And what this thing does is it just makes sure that we ground the valves appropriately and we ground the seats appropriately, and that our contact between the two are sealing like they should. So on this cylinder head, we got it all together and we're ready to check the vacuum. So let's do that real quick. I got to plug off the spark plug tube hole here, and then confirm the vacuum. We got getting about a, let's see, a 17 on that. About a 16 on that one. Another 17. And about a 16. So anything over about 15 and a half is going to be sufficient for what we're after. We also have an interference fit where we grind the exhaust valves at 44.5 degrees, and we cut the seats at 45 degrees. So it leaves a little bit of interference there. So as the engine runs, it pounds into place and seals up. And all these are passing. So, the next step here is to make sure we don't have any fingerprints or grease marks that got left behind. Sometimes during working these heads at these final stages, something will get a little grease on it. Our hands will be dirty, and we just want to wipe up any kind of fingerprints or any kind of inconsistencies that we have. A little bit of grease there we can wipe off. And then our next step here is to put on a heat tab. Right here, this is our heat tabs, and they melt at about 230 degrees Fahrenheit. What that tells us is if you're putting the cylinder head on your car You don't change out the radiator when it needs changed out, or you get some sort of reason that overheats your engine, at those temperatures, the metal starts to flex and warp, and you can see these head gasket surface just really warp out, kind of like a banana shape, and then you get a head gasket blown or other issues that could come from that. And what this tells us is, if you've overheated your engine, you've pretty much voided your warranty on this cylinder head. We can do a lot to protect our customers, but if you're overheating your cylinder head, there's not much we can do but fix the cylinder head again and advise you on how not to do that. So we put a little bit of gasket on here to hold that keeper in place, and put it on the other side of a coolant port. There's coolant here, so that if the coolant gets to that temperature where we're concerned about, that heat tab's definitely going to melt. Another step that we do here is we take a marker and inspect all the holes. So we just look them over, make sure the threads are in good shape, look over the springs, make sure they're in proper position. Put a little mark showing that we've checked all the tips of these valves here, and they look clean and they've been worked over properly. This just builds a little confidence for ourselves and for our customers. When they look at this, they can know that we inspected every single point of this cylinder head. And I like how it looks, little dots over saying you verified everything. Let's see. And that thread insert came out really nice. Couple dots here. Inspect this thing. And that's all we got. That finishes up our rebuild for this Toyota Starlet 1981 1.3 liter. Thank you for watching this video. Remember to like and subscribe and hit that bell notification button. And remember, it's all in your head.